Welcome to episode 47 of the World Builders Anvil. I'm your host, Jeffrey W. Ingram, and today's episode is an interview with D.N. Frost. Don't know where to start building your fantasy world? Do you need more? Does it make sense? Forget any worries and become a crafter of imagination. This is the place that will help prime your mind. Now, it's time to heat up the forge, break out the mithril ingots and hammer. Welcome to the World Builders Anvil. I'm your host, Jeffrey W. Ingram. Let's sup from the mug of Java and build. D.N. Frost is a fantasy author, cartographer, and world builder. She is best known for her work with Awakening, Tales from the Known World, Book 1. She is a person I am glad to call friend, and a person I go to talk about maps or language. Now let's put our hammers together for D.N. D.N. Frost is a fantasy author, cartographer, and world builder. She is best known for her work with Awakening, Tales from the Known World, Book 1. Hello, D. Is there anything else you'd like the audience to know about you?
Not really. I mean, I do writing and I do crafting, and I have spiritual pursuits like tarot reading, and I feel like that makes me a good storyteller and world builder, the tarot aspect of it. That, and I have a BA in linguistics, which lets me make up languages for the book, which is pretty fun.
And secret disclosure right now to the audience, D.N. and I will be working on something later on about this, about languages. Just don't tell anyone else. Okay. So how do you feel today? Orc or elf?
I don't know. I'd say I feel decidedly human. Orcs and elves and all the other fictional races usually get a bunch of extra special sparklies put on them. But in my world, I make the humans really cool, and they have their own magic and stuff. So why not? Why not capitalize on my own humanity?
Wow, that's the first time I've had a human response, but okay. That's fine. That's fine. However you feel. All right. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your latest work?
Well, right now I'm working on Broken, which is book 2 of my series, Tales of the Known World. It kind of takes up where book 1 left off. It continues the story. I do a lot of, I don't want to give too much away, but I do a lot of like behind-the-scenes stuff in my newsletter if you want to know a whole lot more about the upcoming work.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about maps seem to be kind of important in your work. So could you talk a little bit about those?
Oh, yeah. I love maps. I just taught myself from some Photoshop tutorials on YouTube, like how to make a map. And then I kind of got hooked. I made one map, and I found out that it was super shareable for me. I could show people suddenly, and I didn't have to just hope they listened about my book. But I just got hooked. I started doing maps for each section of the book and each chapter of the book. So now it's part of my writing process as like an inspiration tool before I go into the next step of what I'm doing. I usually like to map it first. And it was just totally for me while I was working on the story, and then when I published the book, I realized, well, I have like 20 maps I should probably put in there so people can enjoy them like I do.
Now, do you share your maps out on Twitter?
Yeah, I tweet my maps on occasion. I also have them in like an art gallery online, so you can like browse through them and share them if you want. And then I have the high definition ones that are like print quality. If you want to print one out for like your own D&D game or something, you can, print it out from my newsletter. You actually get access to all this great bonus content like the high definition maps. But those are the best ways to see them.
So, as a world builder, you have a linguist background. You have this newfound love for mapping. Is that sort of the core? Is that sort of what makes your world building different than other world builders, or do you think there's a difference, or what do you think makes your world building special?
Well, aside from the maps, which I feel help people get more immersed in the world, make them more familiar, aside from the maps, one thing that is unique about my world building is that everyone has magic. The magic is diverse and it's different per race and per individual, but everyone's got something, and that's pretty rare, especially in fantasy when you look at humans, for instance. Usually they're the lame, magicless race that no one wants to be and no one ever feels like being. And, I kind of have changed that in mine. Most world building, I think, is like the builder asks some what-if questions and then goes through and answers those what-ifs in their world building. And one of mine was, what if everyone had magic? How would that change the cultures? How would even the magical parts of the cultures shift because everyone has magic? It's not just some special thing only the elite people get. And so if magic becomes commonplace, it's rooted in the fabric of society, and that really makes a big difference in how the society functions. Another what if is, what if prophecy were commonplace? So I have a whole race of people who can tell the future, and they do every day. So there's tons of prophecy about the future, and it, again, changes the way that people function. So those are my what ifs. That's what I like exploring through my stories and world building.
Now, would you call your race of prophecy, is it kind of like a society where they're all like the Oracle of Delphi? Is it like that abstract form of prophecy, or is it more straightforward? Is it finally a prophet who's like, hey, listen, if you go there, you're going to die?
If only it were that easy. Those types of straightforward prophets don't make for good foreshadowing. So there's actually two types of prophecy. The prophetic race is the merfolk under the sea, right? The females can scry, which is they look in a bowl of liquid and they can see visions of the future in the reflections in the bowl. And then the men can prophecy, and they actually go into a trance and they say some words, kind of like the Oracle at Delphi, and other people have to write down those words. And then there's a whole big to-do about analyzing them and cross-referencing them with other prophecies to interpret and deduce what the future holds. And that's actually something that you explore in Book 2 quite a bit. There's a whole adventure in the Mer world where you learn about the ins and outs of prophecy.
Is there any expected ETA on Book 2 at this point, or
ETA for the book? Broken, I'm hoping to publish by December of this year. I can't make any promises at this point because it's getting closer and closer, and I'm still in the drafting portion of it. But pending life happening, it should be published in December.
well, hopefully life doesn't happen in a bad way to slow you down. All right.
Right.
So when did you first know that you had a love for world building?
It would probably be in 9th grade, my freshman year of high school. I just kind of bumped into someone, we became friends, and she did this mystical thing called RP, or role play. She kind of got me into it. And long story short, we go online and we play back and forth. We're different characters, and we just interact as those characters in like a text-based medium, like a chat room or a forum or something. And from there, I started building my own games and worlds and stories for us to play in. And I got a lot of really good feedback from my players about it. And that's kind of when I discovered that I had a knack for it that most people don't.
When you talk about like having a knack for world building, what do you mean by that?
Well, like I said, I was world building for my game. So I did maps, and at that point the maps were not nearly as good or professional looking, but I still made maps for my players. I made up a language. My very first game, I made up a language that you could name things in or have as like, a cool plot twist, like some old language inscribed somewhere. But I'd made up a language for it. My players were really, really involved and engaged in the world that I made up. And they were like, wow, you're really good at this. They were just really enthused by my ability to hatch plots and involve their characters in those plots in fun, unexpected ways. And in the game, the online games that we did, there were always people coming in to start playing, and there were people who moved out and stopped playing. So I had this need to constantly be building new stuff into the world for the new characters to engage in and play with. And I just always got really great positive feedback from my players about it. That's what gave me the inkling I had a knack for it.
And for anyone who's never told stories through role-playing games, just to let you know, if players don't enjoy your material, they're going to let you know. They'll either A,
Yes.
stop showing up, or B, and more likely be very rude about it. Maybe both, and they might do that if they like it too, but that's a different thing. Okay. And now because I failed my role on asking questions in order, I want to go back one here and say, how do you connect your world building back to the story?
That's tough. For me, the world building I do now is about the story, so they're really interwoven. The world building is not just the setting and not just the maps, but it's the cultures and those what ifs I talked about that inspire my stories. And then the stories themselves are characters who are from the world and have grown up in these cultures, going off on their adventures and interacting with each other. So my world building, really, it forms the foundation of the story. There could be no story without the world behind it.
So now let's take a second and can you tell me a story about your I can moment? And that is the moment in time that you stopped world building in your basement or in your dining room and actually said, I can actually take the world and the stories I've created and I can share them with people. What is that moment for you?
So my I can experience was really when I decided to buy into putting in the dedication and effort to actually get what I had, which at that point was a written manuscript that wasn't really edited or anything like that, and taking that to a publishable standard. And it really just took a lot of, I guess, like a leap of faith on my part. I had to strip a lot of my free time down and devote it to doing the editing and the mapping and all of the stuff that I would need to get it where it's going. And it was a big moment of just not being afraid of trying, honestly. And what helped me through that I can experience was all of this positive feedback that I'd had through my years of doing world building for gaming. Where I got, my players were really fans of my worlds and they really enjoyed the stories that I invented for us to play with. And so all of that kind of bolstered me up to this point where I decided, you know what, I really can put forth the effort and the time necessary to get this where it's going. And that I believed enough in my own abilities to do it all myself. Because I did my own mapping, my own cover art, my own editing, everything, and my own publishing even. So I'm completely self-done and decided to believe in myself, as cheesy as that sounds.
No, that's a huge part of it. The mind, at least for me personally, the mind was always the thing holding me back. My wife started cheerleading me years before I got the courage to start, really. That does not sound cheesy at all to me. I can completely understand that. So, what would you say is your biggest achievement to date?
It's probably following through on that I can moment where I've published my book, and now I'm building a platform to help present that book to readers, and to help share my current endeavors making the next book, share that with readers, to just kind of engage people in what I'm doing. But the actual publishing itself was probably the biggest achievement to date, where I can go on the internet anywhere at all and type in a URL and see my book available for sale. That's huge. It was huge to me before I accomplished it, And then when I accomplished it, it felt like almost I hadn't actually accomplished anything for a while. It didn't really sink in for a while, but that is really the biggest achievement, is just getting the book published, getting it done and published. It's harder than you think it is.
I'm learning that. Okay. What real-world advice do you wish you had known sooner?
Well, let's see. There's a lot of advice I could throw out here, but one of the things that I learned after publishing and starting to build my platform is that generally when you have a book that you're planning on publishing, you want to build a platform first where you can connect with people and engage them in what you're doing before you publish, because then when you publish, you can let all the people who care about you know, hey, that book I was talking about, it's actually published now. Whereas what I did is I kind of, I just steamrolled straight ahead through publishing and then decided to look at marketing for the first time. And pretty much everything I've learned from that day on was that I did it backwards. That's probably the most helpful advice that I could have given my younger self, to not do it backwards.
And I just want to point this out to all of the listeners here. If you're thinking about going this route, this is the last two authors in a row who stated, make sure to start a platform as soon as you can, because that's the biggest thing that will help sell your book. And selling books is the easiest way to keep writing them. In your experience of building your platform, were there any of the skills that you learned as a world builder that you could kind of apply towards building a platform?
Any world building skills I could apply?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I do in my world building, I've gotten a lot of feedback on characters. That's one of the things that a lot of my reviews over and over again, they talk about my characterization and how realistic and relatable my characters are. And that kind of makes sense if you think about building a platform as an author. You're relating to not fictional characters, but real life people. And the way you make fictional characters relatable is make them like real life people. So I guess my biggest world building skill that would cross over to platform building would just be my understanding of people and what drives them and what they want. Those motivations that you think about for your character, that's also the motivation you should be thinking about for your reader. What does your reader want? What does your reader care about? Why would your reader take time out of his or her busy day to read your story? Those are things that as a world builder I'm pretty good at figuring out for, my characters, what drives them, what they want, and just crossing that over to figure out my ideal reader, and then building my platform for that person.
So you actually consider the people who you sell books to people?
Yeah, they're human beings who make a conscious choice to read my work.
I wish a lot of the companies I've worked with had that same opinion of their customers.
Yeah. Humans are human.
They're humans, and maybe a little orcs and elves mixed in. Okay. Okay, now tell us a quick story about some task that could have got you started sooner as a writer.
Looking back, I think the one thing that prevented me from moving forward on my own author journey a lot sooner was that I spent all my time role-playing. I spent so much time playing games with others, writing in these groups for fun, that I didn't have any free time left to devote to my own writing. And at some point, I kind of noticed that my role-playing was like eating up all my time, because it's much more gratifying when someone instantly goes, oh, that thing you just said your character did was so cool. I loved hearing that, and now I'm going to write a response for you. That's much more engaging and gratifying than toiling in obscurity for 1 to 5 years to get a book ready to publish and then hoping people read it and share it with you. So that was really what hung me up for a really long time, was that I loved role-playing and I loved playing with other people, and I loved doing that so much that I just couldn't peel myself away from it and put time towards something like getting my own book published. Finally, I just pulled the plug and made the shift. But doing the writing for me was huge. It's much more gratifying on a long-term basis, and I'm really glad I made the shift now. At the time, I was like, no, role-playing, I love it. So.
Okay, very good. All right. Now we are moving on to the gauntlet round. And for all of those of you who do not know what the gauntlet round is, this is where I torture writers by making them give short answers to questions. All right. First question. What held you back from sharing your world or worlds sooner?
Time and thinking nobody cared. It's hard to get up the energy to share your stuff when you're pretty sure no one is really going to be interested in it.
Favorite type of fantasy worlds? Alien, Earth-like, or Earth-based?
I like Earth-like worlds. They're the most relatable, but they're also fun and different.
What is your favorite time period for fantasy?
I would probably go medieval as my most ubiquitous time period. I have other time periods that I'm exploring in spin-off stories, but medieval is one of the mainstays.
What is the most important habit or skill in creating a world?
The most important thing is detail. You have to fill in the details. Like one detailed town that you have is a better built world than a zillion vague countries. You just really need detail to immerse your reader and bring your world to life.
What tool could you not work without?
Photoshop for the maps, at least. I use Photoshop for my maps. And for everything else, I'd say imagination is the tool I need the most.
Excellent choice. That's my favorite. All right. What is one resource you would offer to a world builder starting down your path?
The biggest resource that anyone can offer a world builder is interest, support, and encouragement. So just having people who care about your world and what you're doing is huge. And for me, what I specifically can offer to world builders starting out down this path is maps. I have found that maps are really shareable, so you get a lot of feedback that you wouldn't normally get. They're really motivating because you get all this feedback, and so you're invigorated about your world. And they're really inspiring. You get more in touch with your world. You trigger new thoughts and ideas, and you learn about new areas and therefore the people and the stories that happen in those areas. If I had one resource to offer world builders, it would be maps. I make maps for other people, so that's what I'd say.
I have to say, from my own personal experience, when I have images attached to a tweet, I find those actually get retweeted more often. Other images that I attach with them, or maybe my other images just suck, but people like maps, especially gamers, I think.
Oh yeah, it gets a lot more attention. It's the best way to share your world with other people without requiring them to like read your whole book first. You just show them a map, and then they're engaged.
And I hate to cheat here because I am on the comment section, but I just remember spending hours in The Hobbit just looking at the map, and that was it. And just going over the map and trying to find all of the details I could. I found that as engaging as the rest of the book, which says something. It's a very good book. But no, maps. Last question. If you ended up in a world you created, what would be the first thing that you would do?
Probably do magic. Since everyone in my world has magic, that means that humans have magic. That means that little old me, Miss Human that I am, would have magic, and I would be able to do it. So that's definitely the first thing I would do is like cast magic spells and just figure out what my specific magic abilities are. Because who doesn't want to do magic? We get right down to it.
Well, probably most people listening to this podcast would love to do magic too. So, all right. But really, Dee, I want to thank you very much for doing this interview today and letting me share a little bit of you with my audience. And just for the people listening, how can they find out more about you?
You can go to my website at dnfrost.com. The best way to find out about me is through my newsletter, where I share like my adventures as an author. I kind of share my trials and tribulations with what I'm working on right now, and the things that inspire me to keep working, and obviously inspire new world building ideas. So that's the absolute best way to get to know me, is through my newsletter, which you can subscribe to from my website.
What is your Twitter handle for people?
Oh, on Twitter and Facebook, I'm dnfrost13. So you can find me both places there. Yeah, I'm pretty approachable and friendly, so I encourage anyone who wants to just get a hold of me. Yeah, and on my website, there's also like an about page where you can contact me in an array of other ways as well. Those are the main ones.
All right, well, thank you again. And for everyone out there listening, close down this episode. Before you even think about rating and reviewing my show, go to Dean Frost's website and go join that newsletter. It is a great newsletter. And I tell you, she shares out prophecies, and then you get to vote on maps every month. It's actually a little interactive and fun. I really enjoy it as a newsletter. That's me personally. And you should go join her newsletter. And that's a great way to get a hold of her, too.
Totally left out that giveaway that I had mentioned to you.
It's a 4-hour commission. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the giveaway?
Yeah, well, I'd already kind of mentioned that I do my own maps, and then I do maps for other world builders too. And like I was saying, that's the big resource that I can offer my fellow world builders is maps. So I thought a great way to help engage people and just give them a sense of what I'm capable of. I'm doing a giveaway of a small map. It'll be 4 hours, and that'll be free time that I'll just spend on it instead of my usual commission rates. But a 4-hour map of your world, and a lot of my commission stuff, if you go to dnfrost.com/commissions, there's a bunch of information there, including like a downloadable brochure about how the commission process works, so that you can kind of get familiar with everything. But the map itself that I'm giving away, it's 4 hours of Photoshop time. That does not include correspondence time, which I always consider free. So the winner of this giveaway will get connected with me, and we'll talk about your world and what sort of mapping needs you have, and then I'll put together a map in that 4-hour time span. Since I'm pretty proficient in cartography for fiction now, I can do quite a bit in 4 hours. I can get you continents and coastlines. I can get you some regions, mountain ranges. We can do a bunch of different colors for all your regions, obviously label everything in a font that you choose. We can put some major towns and ports, cities, and stuff in there for you. Basically, whatever your world is, we can give you like an overview world map in this giveaway. And the best way to enter to win is you subscribe to my newsletter, and then the very first link that you'll receive in the confirmation page is a link to the entry form. You'll just click through to the entry form. It's really basic. It'll just be a few little details, just so I can kind of get a sense of what your world's like. And then, yeah, the winner I'll be contacting so we can get started.
That is awesome. And once again, go to her website. She has lots of wonderful maps out there. But it is definitely for a lot of people, especially if you're on a budget, this is a great way to get a professional, good-looking map. And it will really help you focus more on your world when you're writing. You can go back to it, you make copies of it, print it out, jot notes, and it's a great way to brainstorm, at least for me. And as always, make sure to go to gardul.com. That's GARDUL.com for the show notes. It'll be under podcasting, World Builders Anvil. That's a great place to get all of the information from the episode that you've just listened to, and to see all the resources that we've talked about in this episode. Thanks for joining us this episode of the World Builders Anvil. Please be sure to rate and review us in iTunes, and please help get the word out to your friends about our show. And join me, Jeffrey W. Ingram at gardul.com, to see the progress of my world and learn why I made the choices I did. And please contact me and let me know the topics you would love to hear in the future. Now strike! why the myth rolls high.